All right, Iron John part 6. So we're up to where the little boy discovers the golden well. So the wild man has showed him this golden wellspring in the forest. It's a very, very interesting part of the story. So I'll just continue on with the last paragraph as usual. If the young man steals the key and climbs on the shoulders of this being, three things will change. The wound, rather than being regarded as bad luck, will be seen as a gift. Second, the sacred or secret water, whatever that is, will appear. Finally, the energy of the sun will somehow be carried into the man's body. We will repeat that part of the story. When the wild man had reached the dark forest once more, he took the boy from his shoulders, put him down on the earth, and said, "You will never see your mother and father again, but I will keep you with me, for you have set me free, and I feel compassion for you. If you do everything as I tell you, all will go well. I have much gold and treasure, more than anyone else in the world." The wild man prepared a bed of moss for the boy to sleep on, and in the morning took him to a spring. "Do you see this golden spring? It is clear as crystal, and full of light. I want you to sit beside it and make sure that nothing falls into it, because if that happens, it will wrong the spring. I'll return each evening to see if you've obeyed my order." The boy sat down at the spring's edge. Occasionally he glimpsed a golden fish or a golden snake, and he took care to let nothing fall in. But as he sat there, his wounded finger was so painful that without intending to, he dipped it into the water. He pulled it out instantly, but he saw that the finger had turned to gold. And no matter how much he washed it, the washing did no good. Iron John came back that evening and said, "Anything happen with the spring today?" The boy held his finger behind his back to keep Iron John from seeing it and said, "No, nothing at all." "Ah, you've dipped your finger in the spring," said the wild man. "We can let it pass this once, but don't let that happen again." The wild man takes the boy to a sacred spring to water. We note that golden fish and golden snakes swim in this water. Mythologically, this is the old sacred spring guarded by the wild man and sometimes the wild woman as well. If this spring is ever polluted, the old Celtic Noahs say, then everything on the earth will die. So the water is an important place. It is a traditional place for the wild man to carry on his brooding. And we know from the Vita Merlini that Merlin brooded there during his madness. They were also places where the ordinary person went for inspiration, spiritual food, and wisdom. Travelers received nourishment for centuries at the holy well at Logres. At Conla's well, the great holy salmon swam, waiting for the overhanging trees to drop the hazelnuts of inspired madness once every year. Psychologically, this is the water of soul life, but only for those ready to go in. Mircea Eliade says of male initiation, the puberty initiation represents above all the revelation of the sacred. Before initiation, for boys, do not yet fully share in the human condition precisely because they do not yet have access to the religious life. Religion here does not mean doctrine, or piety, or purity, or faith, or belief, or my life given to God. It means a willingness to be a fish in the holy water, to be fished for, by Dionysus or one of the fishermen, to bow the head and take hints from one's own dreams, to live a secret life praying in a closet, to be lowly, to eat grief as the fish gulps water and lives. It means being both fisherman and fish, not to be the wound, but to take hold of the wound. Being a fish is to be active, not with cars or footballs, but with soul. Those working with alcoholic families in the last 10 years have made much of the word denial. And it is a good word. Denial stands for amnesia, forgetfulness, oblivion. An ocean of oblivion sweeps over a child when it is shamed. A woman is sexually abused at 4 and forgets the event entirely until she's 38. And there is no blame for the oblivion. Denial means we have been entranced. We live for years in a trance. In The Raven, the Grimm brothers, a young girl changes into a raven when her mother objects to her behavior and remains so enchanted for years. In The Six Swans, 6 young boys turn into swans when the father, through his cowardice, opens the house to evil, and the boys remain enchanted for years. I wrote in a poem called 50 Males Sitting Together concerning a young man about to go into trance. This is the poem. The woman stays in the kitchen and does not want to waste fuel by lighting a lamp. As she waits for the drunk husband to come home, then she serves him food in silence. What does the son do? He turns away, loses courage, goes outdoors to feed with wild things, lives among dens and huts, eats distance and silence. He grows long wings, enters the spiral, ascends. Being brought to the water by a mentor means the end of enchantment. The wild man's water does not itself heal the wound that led to the escape or ascension, but it gives strength to the part of us that wants to continue the effort to gain courage and be human. When Iron John takes the boy to the water, the energy of the sun is somehow carried into the young man's body. The story says it this way, quote, "Without intending to, he dipped it into the water. He pulled it out instantly, but he saw that the finger had turned to gold." God all over the world symbolizes sun glory, royal power, self-generating radiance, freedom from decay, immortality, spiritual luminosity. And it is that gold which has come to the boy's finger. By arranging the surprise of the golden fingertip, the wild man, acting as a spiritual guide here, gives the promise. The promise is a rediscovery. We could say a rediscovery of a gold that was always there. We do not laboriously by hard labor in grade school accumulate a story of sun energy in the spirit warehouse. The gold was in us while we were in the womb. The child is born, as Woodworth said, trading clouds of glory. The child is the inheritor of millennia of spiritual and imaginative labor. Kabir says, "We sense there is some sort of spirit that loves birds and the animals and the ants. Perhaps the same one who gave a radiance to you in your mother's womb. Is it logical you would be walking around entirely orphaned now? The truth is, you turned away yourself and decided to go into the dark alone." We know from a famous papyrus describing mummification that the Egyptian priests applied gold to the fingernails of the dead man or woman. As they did so, they spoke these words, "Now the gold which belongs to Horus comes to your fingernails and makes you immortal." The image of the gold fingertip in our story then is very old and may come down all the way from the 2nd or 3rd millennium BC. But instead of the Egyptian temples with their solid gold statues of the gods, we have the golden fish and snakes swimming in the pond. We can pick up from Greco-Roman life one more detail that helps us to grasp the meaning of the gold that will not wash away. The Romans believed that each human being had inside him or her an angel or daemon, which came down through the family line and was the seed of the individual good fortune in that person. They called this seed or spark or lucky star the genius, when noticed in a man, and the Juno when noticed in a woman. The Romans imagined the daemon as a guide, halfway between human and divine, a messenger from the holy world, a kind of guardian angel, or what the Norwegian poet Rolf Jacobson calls the white shadow. We notice that the gold appears on the very same finger that dared to open the wild man's cage, so the boy's fate is intimately bound to the use he made of the key. So much for the mythological way of seeing things. Psychologically, what is the gold on the finger? When does it show up in ordinary life? The story says that when we are in the presence of either a mentor or the wild man, a hint will come to us as to where our genius lies. Sometimes in a love affair, the lovers make love with the wild man and the wild woman, right in the room, and if we are those lovers, we may feel certain body cells turn gold that we thought were made entirely of lead. Lovers and saints feel their fingertips are golden, alright. They may sense in themselves a freedom from ordinary limits for days or months. An artist feels a curious mood of intensity when he or she is working on an art object, a poem, or a painting or a sculpture. We could say that the sacred pond is right there in the studio, and the artist becomes capable of thoughts and feelings much wilder than he or she ever experiences in shutdown days. The fingers holding the pen or brush turn gold, and we suddenly see amazing images and realize what we are really good at. The wild man here amounts to an invisible presence, the companionship of the ancestors and the great artists among the dead. A love poem or an ecstatic meditation poem is really an ingenious way to preserve memory of the moment when the fingertip turns gold. The young runner crosses the finish line in the presence of her coach. The tips of her toes are gold. The physicist working with his mentor at Princeton suddenly writes an equation on the board with his golden chalk. Good gardeners have golden thumbs, not green thumbs. And sometimes the mentor or teacher sitting with a student slips into soul water and the tongue turns to gold. I think we can regard therapy, when it is good, as a wading by the pond. Each time we dip our wound into that water, we get nourishment and the strength to go on further in the process. Initiation, then, does not mean ascending above the wound, nor remaining numbly inside it, but the process lies in knowing how to or when, in the presence of the mentor, to dip it in the water. The wound that hurts us so much, we involuntarily dip it in water. We have to regard as a gift. How would the boy in our story have found out about his genius if he had not been wounded? Those with no wounds are the unluckiest of all. Of course, one can't think that, because no such person has ever been found. Men are taught over and over, when they are boys, that a wound that hurts is shameful. A wound that stops you from continuing to play is a girlish wound. He who is truly a man keeps walking, dragging his guts behind. Our story gives a teaching diametrically opposite. It says that where a man's wound is, that is where his genius will be. Wherever the wound appears in our psyches, whether from alcoholic father, shaming mother, shaming father, abusing mother, where it stems from isolation, disability or disease, that is precisely the place for which we will give our major gift to the community. The Norwegian artist Edvard Munch clearly gave his immense gift out of his disabling anxiety. We feel such a gift giving in Franz Kafka also, in Charles Dickens, in Emily Dickinson, in Anna Akhmatova, in Cesar Vallejo. Probably not saying most of those names correctly. Before we finish this discussion of the wound and the genius, we must ask the question, what gender might the water be? Is it masculine or feminine? It's both. But in this century, we are unlikely to give that answer very quickly. A strange thing has happened. In our society, the earth and all the water in it is considered to be feminine, and by extension, it belongs to women. In the West, the sky belongs to men and the earth to women. There is a sky father and an earth mother. There's nothing wrong with those phrases, but two other phrases have fallen into oblivion: sky mother and the earth father. The Egyptians, when Plato visited them, remarked that the Greeks were only children, and the Egyptians did have the older mythological and religious base. They well knew Ra, the sky father, and Isis, the earth mother. But prominent in every Egyptian moment were two other gods, Nut and Geb. Nut, the sky mother, was painted on the inside of every coffin or mummy lid, so that the dead person looking up saw a being bending down from the stars. Stars were shown on her body and around her body. Her hands and feet touched the earth, and the rest arched among the heavens. I came out of the mother naked, and I will be naked when I return. The dead man or woman said. The mother gave, and the mother takes away. Blessed be the name of the mother. Then there was Geb, the earth father. Libby and Arthur Coleman, in their book The Father, reproduce fine paintings of Geb, who lies with his back to the earth, his stomach and erect phallus, earth-coloured, reaching up toward the woman in the sky, all longing for the stars. The Greeks and the Europeans after them lost track of the full complement of four gods and preserved memory of only two. When we remember only two gods, the sexes polarize and begin to seem opposite. Each gender becomes identified. Men with sky, women with earth. Men become identified with sky fire, women with earth water. Leave it there. See you next one.